So the story begins in 1980. Because of the economic collapse and Fidel Castro becoming the ruler, millions of Cubans leave their country and travel across the sea to reach America. Among them is a refugee named Tony. Because of his criminal record, the immigration and customs officers do not allow him to enter America. Instead, he is sent to a detention center along with his childhood friend Manny and several other blacklisted criminals. After staying there for many days, one day Manny tells everyone that a retired Cuban army officer has arrived at their camp. If that man dies, the authorities might give the detainees American nationality and a green card. Tony wants to get out of the detention center, so he takes advantage of a riot happening there and kills that officer. Soon after, Tony and Manny receive American nationality and are released from the detention camp. In the city of Miami, they begin working at a roadside food stall, cooking food and washing dishes. Tony soon realizes that just becoming an American citizen is not enough if they still live in poverty. One day a man named Omar comes to meet them. He is the same person who had given them the contract to kill the officer in the detention center. Omar is a drug lord in the city, and he offers them another job for $500. Tony refuses and says they are not made for such small jobs. Omar gets offended and says that if Tony has so much confidence, he should handle a cocaine deal with Colombians the next day. If they succeed, they will earn $5,000. Tony agrees. Because the deal is risky, Tony brings along his Cuban friends Chichi and Angel, along with Manny. They must go to a hotel, give the money, and buy cocaine from the Colombians. Tony leaves the money with Manny and Chichi in the car outside and goes into the hotel room with Angel to check things. But the Colombians never plan to sell the cocaine. Instead, they threaten Tony and Angel at gunpoint and try to steal their money. When Tony refuses to reveal where the money is, they dismember Angel with a chainsaw in front of Tony. Before they can attack Tony as well, Manny and Chichi arrive from downstairs and shoot the Colombians. The man who cut Angel runs away, but Tony shoots him in broad daylight in public and kills him. Now Tony has saved the money and stolen the cocaine from the Colombians. However, Tony believes that Omar had intentionally sent them to die at the hands of the Colombians. So instead of giving the cocaine and money to Omar, Tony personally delivers both to Omar's boss, the drug lord Frank Lopez. Frank is extremely impressed by Tony's guts and fearless nature, and he offers him a job. Within a few days, Tony becomes Frank's most important man and begins learning the cocaine trade. Tony also meets Elvira, Frank's girlfriend, who is much younger than him. Tony begins to like her and tries several times to impress her. Tony tells Manny that one day he will also have Elvira, but Manny thinks this is just Tony's dream. One day, Tony goes with Manny to a house where his mother and younger sister Gina live. They had migrated from Cuba 5 years earlier. Tony tries to help them financially, but his mother throws him out of the house, saying that criminals like him are the reason Cubans have a bad reputation in America. When Gina comes outside to drop Tony off, Manny notices her beauty and says she is very beautiful. Tony becomes furious and warns Manny never to look at his sister like that again. A few months later, Frank sends Tony to Bolivia to finalize a big drug deal with a man named Sosa. Tony successfully negotiates the deal with a good profit margin and tells Sosa that he will discuss it with Frank once he returns to Miami. But soon Tony witnesses something shocking. Sosa's men hang Omar from a helicopter and kill him. Sosa then tells Tony that he has high-level contacts in America, through whom he learned that Omar was actually an undercover police informant. Sosa says Frank is an idiot for keeping such a man in his organization for years. After this incident, Frank becomes very angry at Tony and backs out of the deal with Sosa. Because of this, Tony separates from Frank and starts running his own small cocaine network. One night at a nightclub, Tony sees his sister Gina dancing with a man and sniffing cocaine in the bathroom. After an argument, Tony angrily slaps her. Manny calms the situation and drops Gina home, explaining to her that Tony is not acting like a brother, but like a father who is overly protective. Tony also continues to sit close to Elvira and talk to her often, which leads to an argument between Tony and Frank at the club. To take revenge for this insult, Frank sends 2 hitmen to kill Tony. Tony gets shot in the arm, but he still manages to kill both shooters and escape. After this, Tony storms into Frank's office with Manny and Chichi and forces Frank to be killed by his own men. That same night, Tony goes to Frank's house and asks Elvira to come with him. Later that night, he sees a giant sign written in lights from a hot air balloon that says, "The world is yours." From that moment, Tony never looks back. He takes over Frank's entire cocaine network in Miami and becomes the city's biggest drug lord. Tony begins dealing cocaine directly with Sosa and eventually marries Elvira. Money begins pouring in from his cocaine business. He builds a huge mansion with 24-hour security and surveillance cameras. He even keeps a pet tiger in the house and opens beauty parlors for Gina. His cocaine trade brings in so much cash that eventually banks refuse to accept so much money. Tony solves this problem by paying bankers a percentage. One day while Tony is counting his cash, the police raid his place. Because he has no drugs or weapons at that moment, the police can only charge him with tax evasion. Although the case is not extremely serious, the police have video recordings of the raid, which could lead to 3 to 5 years in prison. Later, Sosa holds a meeting with several powerful American and South American officials. Sosa promises Tony that he can get his tax problems removed through political connections, but in return Tony must kill a whistleblower journalist who is exposing Sosa and several powerful military generals for their cocaine operations. Tony agrees to the job, but after returning to America, Tony becomes depressed and increasingly addicted to cocaine. He and Elvira start fighting publicly, and eventually Elvira leaves him. Tony's behavior becomes worse day by day. Tony travels to New York to carry out the assassination. A bomb is planted under the journalist's car. However, Tony sees that the journalist's wife and 2 small children are also in the car. Tony refuses to kill innocent people and tells his partner Alberto that they will target the man another day. But Alberto ignores him and tries to activate the bomb anyway. In anger, Tony shoots Alberto and kills him. After this failed attempt, Sosa calls Tony and angrily tells him that because of Tony's mistake, the journalist has now publicly exposed them and the police have discovered the bomb. The journalist now has police protection. Sosa threatens Tony. High on cocaine, Tony does not take the threat seriously. Later, Tony visits his mother, who tells him that Gina has not been home for several days and is living with a man in a new house. Tony goes to that address, where Manny opens the door. Seeing his sister Gina and Manny together in night clothes, Tony realizes they are in a relationship. Without listening to anything, Tony shoots Manny dead. Gina cries and tells Tony that they had married just 2 days earlier and were planning to surprise him. Tony leaves Manny's body behind and returns home with Gina and his men. Tony becomes deeply depressed because he has killed his best friend, and Elvira has also left him. Under stress, Tony begins snorting huge amounts of cocaine, and even his men start worrying about his behavior. Meanwhile, Sosa sends a large army of Bolivian assassins to kill Tony. They silently kill Tony's guards and approach his office. Tony is still sitting in his office, unaware, heavily intoxicated. At that moment, Gina arrives in a mentally unstable state and starts shooting at Tony. Suddenly, one of Sosa's assassins fires through the window, and Gina is killed by the bullets. Tony immediately kills the shooter and throws him out of the window. When he checks Gina, she is already dead from multiple gunshots. By now, Sosa's men have killed most of Tony's guards and reached his office. But Tony is not afraid at all. He pulls out a customized M60 machine gun with a grenade launcher and blasts open the door. Tony kills several attackers with grenades and bullets. Although Sosa's men greatly outnumber him, Tony continues fighting them fearlessly with assault rifles and grenades, even though he himself gets shot many times. Eventually, one assassin quietly approaches Tony from behind and shoots him at close range with a shotgun. Tony falls into the fountain of his mansion and dies. The mansion is now filled with dead bodies everywhere. In the final frame, we see Tony's dead body lying in the pool, and above it is the same famous sign. The world is yours. The very words that once inspired Tony to become so powerful. And that's the end of this iconic mafia story. And with this, the movie ends. So how did you like the explanation? Tell us in the comment box. Thank you for watching this explanation.